What it do? Welcome to another new episode of Locked On Bucks. On today's show, the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Charlotte Hornets again. This time a 12-point margin of victory in a 111-99 win, and the Bucks are now 4-0 coming out of All-Star break. Plus, the Bucks made some more history tonight, so we'll dig into the latest record set by the Bucks and Brook Lopez, plus take a look at Giannis' dominance and the good play from Milwaukee's backcourt, and a little preview of the Bulls game tomorrow. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis. You can catch me weekly on the Technical Foul Podcast and the Pack a Day Podcast, as well as Cheesehead TV's Carry the G and MKE during the NFL season. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and the founder of BrewHoop.com. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, Frank, this was not the blowout that we saw on Tuesday, or honestly, any of the other matchups against the Hornets so far this season, with the Bucks, quote unquote, only winning by 11 tonight, but still a good win. And the Bucks have just been utterly dominant against the Hornets this season. They have outscored the Hornets by 29.2 points over this 4-game season series. That's a franchise record for the Bucks. That is the largest average margin of victory in a season series for the Bucks. And I mean, seeing the Hornets 3 times in your last 8 games does wonders for you as well. The Bucks have now held their opponents to under 100 points in 5 of their last 8 games, with 3 of those coming against the Hornets, plus 1 against the Nuggets and the 76ers. I mean, what the Bucks have been doing, especially against the Hornets, has just been impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to the Low Post over the weekend, and I think on Friday, they might have, I think it was either Friday or Monday. Maybe it was Monday. And I swear they had like a whole like mini segment on the Charlotte Hornets and what they've been doing right. This was, like a day before the Bucks absolutely blew their doors off.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of like, oh, okay, like, yeah, things have been going relatively well for them of late. Their defense had really picked up. Felt like the trades that they made at the deadline were, kind of moves that were going to set them back. But instead, obviously, it gave them, I think, a little bit of a shakeup and, a little bit of a shot in the arm. So, again, not to say that beating the Hornets is some massively impressive thing, but this has been a team that was playing well, had won 5 of 6 before they ran into this Bucks buzzsaw the last 3 days. And so, anytime you go out and win on the road comfortably, that's a positive. You do it by once again surrendering fewer than 100 points, a very kind of clutch 99 allowed tonight again 4 times in a row in one season that they've done that, pulled that trick against the Hornets. So yeah, hey, nice to have another team's number and to win this game. The final margin was only 12 points, but we saw in the second half in particular that lead swelled to 20 plus at various points.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't need to have Giannis and Dame closing out the final minutes of this one, even if, again, the final score looked a little bit closer. And obviously that's important going into a back-to-back, knowing that you have to go into Chicago tomorrow and play a Bulls team that has beaten you in Chicago already once this season. So, I thought it was an interesting game in the sense that Charlotte played super aggressive defense. They were doubling Dame, putting pressure on the ball, forcing the Bucks to move the ball, and it felt like this was one of the Bucks' most unselfish passing nights. I don't know how many kind of like hockey assist extra pass type plays the Bucks made, but the passing was contagious, especially in the first half, slowed down a bit in the second half. And defensively, it's kind of funny. I don't know that they were actually super impressive defensively. I think
They
they
had
did
some
a
lapses.
yeah, they kind of were like doing what I call sort of lazy switching more. Like they kind of were getting like used to like switching a little bit. I'd say the kind of point of attack defense wasn't great today, but I mean, what a difference, a month and whatever change makes. The fact that here we are, the Bucks surrendering just 99 points, and we can look at what they did and say like, yeah, that wasn't great defense from the Milwaukee Bucks, right? So hey, things have obviously turned for the better, and we obviously looked at these two games as games you wanted to bank with that more difficult schedule coming up, and now
Yeah.
we'll say the same thing about tomorrow night's game in Chicago as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And gotta shout out Giannis. He had another crazy efficient game tonight. 10 to 15 from the field, 66.7% from the field, including 2 of 2 from 3 tonight, including the one he walked into just too much space from Grant Williams. He also had 10 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, Giannis really led the way for the Bucks, and it continues the stellar play that we've been seeing from him. Like, looking at Giannis's shooting numbers over the season, Bally showed this graphic during the game, and I was just like, wow. And just looking at his field goal percentage month by month. And in October, of course, a very small sample size, but Giannis shot 55.4% from the field. November, that number was 61.1. Saw a tiny increase in December up to 61.6. Dropped a little in January, 60.8. But the month of February coming into tonight, Giannis was shooting 65.4% from the field. And he finished the month of February shooting 42.9% from 3. Of course, on limited attempts, 1.8 a game, but Giannis has just been playing some outstanding basketball.
Yeah, and I mean his usage is down a little bit. I mean the point scoring numbers have not been popping as much of late. We saw it here in these two Hornets games. He really didn't need to go and put up huge numbers. Tonight, 19 points in the first half really set the tone, I thought, for this game. And then second half, kind of cruise control. Bucks didn't need really anybody scoring a ton, and Giannis really didn't take many shots in the second half. But yeah, he's just been really in control. I think the passing obviously continues to be impressive. The one pass he had tonight, which was, I don't know, like 180 hook pass to the
To
corner to
PC in
Pat
the corner.
Connaughton.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a beauty. I restarted my hashtag cool pass thread for Giannis, just kind of cataloging some of his more fun passes, and there have been a ton of them of late, and we saw it again tonight. He's this is I'd say the most confident he's ever looked passing the ball. And 5 assists tonight, not like a ton, but only 1 turnover, 5 assists. And as you said, hit those 2 threes. He's now at 29% even on the season from 3-point range, which is saying something considering how low he was, in the like high teens, low 20s at one point, seemingly not that long ago. So, again, like is this some bellwether of Giannis figuring out the 3-point shot? No, I don't think.
Probably not. No.
I'm too old to fall for that trick again. But hey, it's nice to see the shots going in, and again, another little tidy scoring night. Again, it feels like hitting 2/3 of his shots, 67% tonight. It doesn't even feel like a big, it doesn't feel like a big deal. It's like, well, you expect
That's
it,
how
right?
good he's been. Yeah.
Right. And he didn't score in huge volume tonight. Same with Dame, but they spread the ball around and they got some help, right? Which I think remarkable how much better the Milwaukee Bucks look when other guys are also making an impact. Malik Beasley was shooting the lights out again tonight. We've seen that obviously many times this season, 19 points on 12 shots. And I'd say Bobby Portis had another really solid scoring night. Pat Connaughton, double digits. I thought he was solid again. Anytime you're seeing the bench, those 2 bench guys scoring in double figures, looking comfortable, and getting positive plus minus ratings, I'd say that's generally a good sign. The starting 5 was all plus 15 to plus 18, which is kind of what we expect from them, given how effective they've been of late. So, yeah, I mean, just keep it rolling, no complaints. And again, especially with that road trip coming up with Clippers, and then that road trip, just try to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, that's 9 straight games in double figures for Bobby Portis. Like you mentioned, he has been playing well. I love that you brought up Malik Beasley. Him and Dame are somebody who I want to talk a little bit more about because Dame from the field, like he didn't have an overall great night shooting. He had a good night shooting from three, but the overall field goal percentage was down. But I thought Dame still had a really good game, even though the percentage 5 from 14 from the field wasn't excellent. But I felt he impacted the game in a few other ways that I want to dive into. Plus, just give Malik Beasley some love for what he's been doing coming up after this break. Get your buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Although the NFL season might be over, the NBA season is heating up. We are out of the All-Star break. The games are feeling bigger than ever, and FanDuel is the place to go because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, that's $150 if your bet wins, and that's just a $5 bet. You can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, plus more. So make sure you visit fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. The website again, fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, a special or official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. A special shout out to all of those everydayers who make sure they tune in to the pod Monday through Friday. Even special shout out to all the folks on YouTube subscribing, commenting, interacting. Always enjoy checking the comments and seeing what everybody's talking about. So if you enjoy what we do here on Locked On Bucks, I got to tell you about Locked On Sports today because you might see some Locked On Bucks action over there as well. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you with 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows that cover every league. So find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Now, ahead of that break, we were talking a little bit about Milwaukee's backcourt, and I want to start with Dame really quick because, like I mentioned, not a super efficient night from the field. Enjoyed seeing him going 3 from 6 from 3, but he was really active defensively. He had 2 steals, had a few other deflections tonight. I think I counted like 4 deflections tonight, including like in the third quarter. Had this nice little poke away when he's playing defense against Miles Bridges. Miles thought he got that size advantage, was going up with the layup, and here comes Dame poking that away, saving the easy 2. Like it was just really, really good to see Dame working on defense. And it was mentioned in the broadcast as well that he made note of the fact that, hey, in Portland, I was a lot of the offense. Don't have to be as much of that here in Milwaukee. It is allowing me to play a little bit more defense. But one thing that also stood out to me with Dame's play, and it's just something I'm keeping an eye on now. During the broadcast, Marcus mentioned that Dale Curry said that Dame and Steph keep an eye on each other's field goal percentage going back and forth because the two of them are the 2 leaders in the NBA. And Dame started 4-4 from the free throw line. And I was like, okay, it's going to be a good game. But it didn't end that way. He only had 1 more free throw outside of that. And I want to see Dame getting to the line a bit more because his attempts have continuously decreased since the start of the season. I had to take a look because in October, 9.3 attempts. Again, a small sample size in October, only a couple of games. But November, 9 free throw attempts a game. December, 7 free throw attempts a game. January, 7.5 free throw attempts per game. The month of February, 4.4 attempts. Like Dame is just not getting to the line the way that he was. But again, he has found ways to remain effective for this team with his defensive effort.
Yeah, I mean, first off, let's acknowledge, right? I mean, like, I think Drew Holiday averaged, under 3 free throws a game pretty much, his entire tenure in Milwaukee. Like, as great as Drew was, like, he never drew fouls. So we're kind of spoiled now with Dame and the rate at which he was drawing fouls early in his Bucks tenure. I think, honestly, there's a close correlation probably between, he had that period of struggles early in the calendar year. And I think refs, honestly, like if they feel like you're not shooting the ball well and you're trying to really, deliberately draw fouls, and we've seen it with Dame where he kind of burrows into the defender, rises up which, I don't in general like that foul call where you just sort of drive sort of diagonally at a guy, feel a bit of contact, just throw the ball up. It felt like he was getting a lot of those foul calls early in the season, and it felt like as his shooting was tailing off, and he kind of was using that to try to just manufacture something. It seemed like officials were just like, you know what, we're not going to
Not
give
doing
that
that
foul
anymore.
as much.
Yeah.
And I think there have been definitely times where the refs have let a lot go, and he's had dealt with some physicality, especially around the basket that should be fouls, and he's just not getting calls. So we'll kind of see where that lands over the next couple months for the rest of this regular season. I think the foul drawing, definitely is an interesting thing to watch, especially when you think about him from a playoff perspective.
Mhm.
One of the things that certainly early in the season that really gave him a high floor from an efficiency standpoint was that, he was getting to the line 8, 9 times a game, hitting 90% of his free throws, even when he didn't have a really efficient shooting night. The free throws and the fact that he doesn't miss free throws was a again kind of mitigated some of that shooting inefficiency. So obviously that's going to be an important kind of barometer, I think, in the playoffs. If he's able to stay aggressive, put the pressure on the defense, and get to the line, again, I think that just changes the dynamic a bit, especially in crunch time. If you can, again, put pressure on the defense, get to the line, and we know he's going to make free throws, that obviously gives the Bucks just kind of another dimension offensively versus if, he's having to just shoot step back jump shots and,
Mhm.
not be able to rely on that. So definitely something I think that bears watching. I think the 3-point shot coming around even tonight with, overall, what was the review was like 5-14. He still made his threes at a good clip, which
Yep.
is a nice flip of the script here. The fact that he's been shooting the three ball well since the All-Star break. So I mean, it was kind of destined to happen. He's not going to be a low 30s 3-point shooter, forever. And again, you just kind of hope it continues because we saw he had the good, month of December and then kind of backslid thereafter. So hopefully he's now again kind of finding a bit more of that rhythm, a bit more of that juice. And I think tonight the stat line being a bit more modest, I think that largely just reflects the fact that the Hornets just said, we're just going to disrupt
Yeah.
you being the offensive creator and try to force the ball out of your hands. Kind of disappointing to me though. Bucks only had 21 assists. Felt like they had a lot more. Again, I think this is one of those games where you look at the box score, maybe a little bit of a head scratcher, like, oh, Dame didn't play that well. Giannis didn't really put up big numbers, but that kind of obscured the fact that the Hornets were really trying to pressure the ball, especially when those guys had it, and force the team into rotation. But obviously they did enough, and defensively, I'm glad you called out Dame because I agree. I mean, there were long stretches in this game where I was like thinking Dame's had as good a defensive night as anyone, like
Yeah.
from an engagement standpoint. Again, it felt like they were not great at the point of attack for long stretches, but I thought Dame actually held up his end of the bargain as good as well as anyone, to be honest. I thought Giannis was kind of probably a little less engaged defensively. He didn't have any blocks or steals, I think, for the second straight game. So, but again, Brooke Lopez protecting the rim a bit, hit that milestone, the 100. I think we'll talk about that in a minute. The 100 blocks, 100 threes yet
Mhm.
again. And yeah, I mean, when Brooke is doing his thing and you've got the guards engaged and the wing defense, at a better place than certainly it was previously. Yeah, I mean, we're just sort of seeing the floor of this defense suddenly feels a lot higher. And I gotta say, I found it annoying, like in the first half of the season, like this idea that suddenly like Damian Lillard like single-handedly is making your defense bad or something like that. I
Yeah.
mean,
It
that's
wasn't
just
just him.
not, yeah, that's just not how, NBA defense, the reality of NBA defense. Dame's not even, with Beasley out there, they're not even hunting Dame that much, to be honest, night in and night out. So again, I thought that was more of a reflection of the team and kind of the overall lack of, you know, uh, organization and cohesiveness, in particular under Griff, versus like just some uniquely Damian Lillard problem. So I'm glad that things are kind of coming together, and all of a sudden, all right, you guys gonna now give Damian Lillard some credit? Probably not, but we will, Camille. We'll give Dame some credit for his
Absolutely.
defense. And what do you know? Winning, making some shots offensively, feeling more engaged offensively, now paying off, I think, a little bit more on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, and the defensive end also stands out from Malik Beasley. I know we talked about his effort after Tuesday night's game against the Hornets, but I also just want to highlight that he's shooting well from three coming out of All-Star break. We even saw him tonight hit the catch high, shoot high in the corner, looking like he's been working with Pat Connaughton a little bit on that one. But I mean, I mentioned it over the All-Star break because from the start of the season up until January 18th, which was a day before Bees really launched his like 3-point shooting campaign year, he was shooting 47.5% from three on 6.2 attempts. From January 19th until the All-Star break, he was shooting 37.6% from three on 7.3 attempts per game. And I think a lot about what Dame was saying, like watching Bees prepare for the 3-point contest, where he's like, man, you're trying too hard. And we made a joke, like maybe that's something to throw your opponent off his game. But he mentioned the fact that how hard Bees was trying. And he kept trying to tell Bees, hey, man, just shoot. Just go out and shoot. And over the All-Star break, I was saying maybe now with the 3-point contest behind them, just time to really focus on what's coming up, be more in, the day-to-day, just hoop, that the 3-point shot will come back a little bit higher than what we were seeing before. Now, I wasn't expecting him to continue to shoot 47.5% from three. I was just saying, hey, if we can get Bees in the low 40s, that'll be good. But coming out of All-Star break in these 4 games, he has been shooting 54.8% from three. So I just wanted to shout out Bees for the hot shooting in addition to the defense that he's been playing as well for this team.
Yeah, I mean, look, what was the theme of the Bucks losing some of those games disappointingly before the All-Star break? The other team shot well from three, and they didn't shoot well from three, and Bees was definitely a part of that, right? Had some struggles, especially for most of that Memphis game. He hit those 2 threes late, but for the most part, really struggled. And, I think he ends up being, again, a bit of a bellwether for that offense, just that, especially that starting group when he's kind of, serving as that safety release valve, floor spreader, and hitting threes and punishing teams for showing that extra attention to Dame and Giannis like he was doing tonight. That offense is just really hard to stop. And again, credit him. I certainly have been questioning all season long, you really want Malik Beasley as a third starter?
Yeah,
Not a knock against
alone.
Malik, but just from a fit standpoint, does that make sense? But he's just kind of continued to do what he's been doing. And I mean, you can't, at the volume that he shoots, you can't fake, mid 40s 3-point shooting. And that is really hard to do. I mean, he's never shot like this from a percentage standpoint. He's been a really high volume guy. He's been a good 3-point shooter, but he's been in just kind of another level of zone. And again, like, can he keep doing this? Can he keep giving the defensive effort that he deserves credit for, along with this level of shooting? I mean, if he can, obviously it gives the Bucks, I think fewer questions defensively.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's also still one of those kind of questions, like even if the defense continues to play well throughout the rest of the regular season, it's like, do you still look at the starting 5 and say like, oh yeah, like I'm good with that group? No problem. We match up well enough against, the Celtics or whoever a difficult first round opponent might be. I still have some concerns there, but credit to them. I mean, they're playing at a high level, and I think they're doing what we hoped they would do coming into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go into the next segment, I do want to mention Brook Lopez. You dropped the hint right there, but just shout out to Brook Lopez. He moved up in Bucks history on Tuesday against the Hornets and again tonight against the Hornets. Now he made NBA history. He is the first NBA player to have 5 seasons with at least 100 blocks and 100 threes. Just Brook Lopez has been just outstanding for the Milwaukee Bucks. Seeing him get to 5 seasons of 100 blocks, 100 threes has been quite impressive. So we're talking about defense. Got to shout out Brook Lopez. He also had 3 blocks tonight. So just want to give him some love as well before we head into the next segment where I have a weird lineup question. This might be real basketball sicko-ish in the next segment that I just want to get your opinion on, plus some news about Chris Middleton's hopeful quick return to the lineup soon, as well as taking a look at this Bulls game that the Bucks have tomorrow night coming up next. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And again, it's no wonder why that is. It's the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about battling thousands of other players, which normally includes pros and sharks. With Prize Picks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. I love playing Prize Picks. I mentioned it earlier this week with the first Hornets game that I took the Giannis over on points, but with the blowout, didn't get to it. But when I do win and I do hit on FanDuel or on Prize Picks, what I love about it the most is getting my money as quickly as possible. And Prize Picks has super quick withdrawals. You have the quick withdrawals plus that easy gameplay, plus a large selection of players and stat types. It all adds up to make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So make sure you head over to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, Frank. Now, Doc Rivers mentioned ahead of the game, he was asked if Chris Middleton was going to be joining the team in Milwaukee. And he said that Chris may meet us in Chicago, but I don't think he'll play versus the Bulls. And based on everything that we've heard Doc Rivers mentioning about Chris's injury, it sounds like he's getting really close. Bulls seems unlikely for the return for him, but Monday is still on the table. And it made me wonder what type of lineups that are we going to see? Because out of All-Star break, Doc has really rolled with his vets. So we've seen the starting 5 with Jay in for Chris. And off the bench, we've been seeing Pat Beverly, Pat Connaughton, Danilo Gallinari, Bobby Portis. Makes sense. Okay, so when Chris comes back, I wonder if we're going to see this jumbo lineup because Doc has mentioned his interest in seeing the Danilo Gallinari, Bobby Portis, Giannis lineups. And we've seen it in 4 games now. Alongside of those 3, it's been Pat Connaughton and Pat Bev. And that lineup hasn't been good. So in 16 minutes of play, which is a small sample size, but of course, Danilo Gallinari just got here. But in 16 minutes of play, they have a 112.9 offensive rating and a 150 defensive rating for a negative 37.1 net rating. And Doc seems to have some interest in this jumbo lineup. And I've been thinking with Chris on the horizon, I'm not sure how much playing time Gallinari is going to get. But do you think we might see like a jumbo lineup where it's actually Chris Middleton, Gallinari, Bobby Portis, and Giannis with some other guard on the court with them?
Well, let me say this. My general interest in that jumbo lineup is minimal, to say the least. I will say shout out to Gallinari. They ran a couple of actions where like he was like kind of like by the elbow, almost like kind of posting up. And Giannis actually came around on like a curl, kind of set a screen and then dove to the rim. And Danilo actually threw him an alley-oop, which was kind of like, okay, that was a little unique play, little action that they put in specifically for Gallo. But look, I mean, this is to me all about putting yourself in the best position you can for the playoffs. Does Gallo, with how he's moving, he looks pretty rusty offensively still here, even though he's been playing before he came to Milwaukee as well. Does Gallo look like a guy that is going to, make a difference in the playoffs? I'm going to go ahead and say no. It's not to say he couldn't have a heater at some point, do some stuff offensively. Sure, it's possible. But I think, Doc's probably looking at, a 9-guy rotation at most in the playoffs. And I think we know the 9, right? I mean, knock on wood, you stay healthy and you're going to have Chris slot back into the starting 5. And then your bench guys are obviously going to be Bobby, Pat, Jay. And then I think Pat Bev, at this point is a pretty safe bet, at this point, obviously to be the 9th guy. And again, what kind of minutes does Pat Bev get in a playoff situation where Dame is getting high 30s, 40 minutes? I don't know that he's going to get a ton. I think it's been interesting seeing Pat play a bit with Dame of late, which I think is an obvious thing to try, given that Pat plays bigger than he is. So, I think that's the 9. Um, is when healthy, like is Doc really going to be able to manufacture minutes in the playoffs for Danilo Gallinari? I just
I
don't
hope
really
not.
see it. If there's some situation where Bobby's like just in a complete funk and not doing anything offensively, and you give Danilo the Gallo a look, like maybe I guess, but yeah, I think that's kind of the group that you'd look at, and Jay, even though Jay's been kind of doing pretty much nothing offensively, I think that's one of the reasons why Dame has been able to boost his usage pretty significantly, especially early in games. It's because they've got Jay basically not taking shots as he's now basically the fifth starter in lieu
Mhm.
of Chris. And obviously I think Jay's kind of struggled a bit offensively, but that starting group, the kind of new starting group, has actually been really effective. I mean, they have over a plus 20 net rating, so it's this weird situation where Jay with that starting group has been great, especially since they've been on this nice run here over the past couple weeks. But overall, his kind of on-off numbers for the season are still really bad. So Jay Crowder with bench units bad. Jay Crowder with the starting 5 good. And again, like I'm not going to entertain like any. Oh well, maybe Chris should come off the bench to like
No.
juice the whatever. It's like nah, play your 5 best dudes. The starting 5's been good all season with Chris. Let's not overthink it. And is Jay better defensively than Chris at this point? I mean, especially in the regular season, I would say yeah, just because I think Jay's going to work harder and he's stronger than Chris is. But the offensive difference is just massive, both from a shooting and playmaking perspective. So I am very excited to see Chris Middleton back. Again, are they going to be as good defensively with Chris back versus when he's been out? I don't think it's going to make a big difference. I don't think they're going to suddenly like struggle defensively because of
Right.
Chris
Same.
Middleton. Like again, like I don't really buy that. But I think offensively he's going to really help. I mean, they're 17th in offensive rating since uh, post Adrian Griffin. They're third in defense, and I think that 17th in offense. Obviously, you look at and say there's a lot of headroom to get better. And for me, that's where Chris makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bucks don't want to get too cute. Like, don't overthink that. But in the regular season, if we see this jumbo lineup, I'm going to laugh a little bit from my couch just to see the absurdity of seeing this many 6'8" plus guys on the court. But second, I have a back-to-back coming up for the Bucks Friday night. The Bucks will kick off the month of March with their final regular season game against the Chicago Bulls. So far in the first 3 games of this season series, the Bucks are up 2-1 in those games. But games 2 and 3 went to overtime. The Bulls won the one in Chicago, which went to overtime. And then game 3 against these two teams, the Bucks won, which also went to overtime. The Bulls are 5-5 over their last 10. But that last win on Wednesday at home against the Cavs in double overtime, really appreciate that one, Chicago. And with that Cavs loss and the Bucks win tonight, the Bucks and the Cavs are really in a dead heat for the 2 seed. Both teams are 8 games out of first place right now. Again, don't think first place isn't really an option for the Bucks at this point, but them gaining ground on the Cavs is a good thing, and I hope they can take care of business tomorrow against a Chicago team that has shown to be really scrappy. Like, you cannot take Chicago for granted and what they can bring on the court on a night in and night out basis.
Yeah, they're capable of going 2 for 29 from 3 and being like complete garbage. They're also capable of, beating good teams as they've done at various points this year. They've had a number of guys on relative hot streaks. I know Ayo Dosunmu has been shooting it really well. Kobe White certainly, over the past couple months, has had a lot of bigger games, and developing into one of the better value contracts in the league. And of course, Alex Caruso, we all know what he can do. Now that can move past hoping that the Bucks can trade for him this year at
At
least.
least this season.
Yeah, at least this season. So yeah, I mean it's gonna be a test. It's like especially second night of the back to back. You never know exactly what you're gonna get from this Bulls team. You hope that you get the bad Bulls, but we've already seen the Bucks kind of under. I mean, I don't know that the Bucks have had a single impressive game against the Bulls this year. They
Not
won
this
the
year.
first game by about 10 and wasn't really particularly impressive. They had the loss in overtime, which obviously was really underwhelming. They blew a game that they should have won with that last second Caruso three in regulation that sent it to overtime, and then they kind of womp their way through the overtime, and then the last game obviously they really shouldn't have needed overtime to beat the Bulls, but that was during the playing with their food era Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So have we evolved beyond the playing with their food era Bucks, Camille?
We're gonna see.
We'll see. I mean, they're not going to go undefeated the rest of the regular season, but again, just beat the Bulls. Like, come on, let's keep the good vibes going here into the weekend, and especially with that tougher schedule forthcoming, would be nice to go into I guess that Clippers game next week with some nice momentum.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. But Friday night, it's a late game, 9 p.m. It's on ESPN as well as WMLW here in Milwaukee. Bucks and Bulls. Hopefully the Bucks can continue this winning streak out of the All-Star break against the Chicago Bulls, but we're going to have to tune in and see. That'll wrap up Locked On Bucks for this week, but we'll be back at it on Monday talking all things Milwaukee Bucks. So for Frank and myself, we'll catch you guys later.